Hello friends, I have been reading several books on tithing, and today I decided to purchase all four of these books by Mr. Ronald Robey, and unfortunately it was a waste of money. I am very disappointed. I wish I could have my money back, so let me save you some time and tell you a few reasons why. Number one, these books are very short. It only took me maybe an hour or hour and a half to read all four, because not only are they short, but they are filled with large quotations of scripture, and the remainder is just Mr. Robey's commentary. So if you're already familiar with the scripture, there's not much to read. And what's worse, the four books are almost exactly the same. In fact, in several of the books are sections that are verbatim copies, and worse, when Robey is not copying and pasting, he repeats himself constantly. And number two, the writing is very poor. Rather than a careful or detailed study of tithe, this reads more like someone who is ranting in their Facebook post. There is nothing new here at all. If you have spent 30 minutes or an hour reading about tithing or reading articles about tithing online, then you are going to be disappointed with these books. And number three, he makes serious accusations about people handling the word deceitfully, lying, and being unscrupulous hypocrites. But not only does he himself use the exact same methods that he accuses others of doing, but he makes admissions that undermine and contradict his own claims. And I'll give you an example. Whenever people try to refute anything in favor of tithing, one of the most, if not the most, important target to attack is Abraham. Abraham is defined in Scripture as a prophet and as a friend of God, and people who argue against tithing try to attack or dismiss Abraham because Abraham lived before Moses, before Sinai, before the Jews. He lived hundreds of years before the Levitical priesthood, and since we Christians also live outside of that priesthood, then the story of Abraham's tithe becomes very important. Robey knows this. He knows that he cannot make his claims unless he gets rid of Abraham, so he argues that Abraham's tithe was not by command, and that Abraham only gave tithe just one time in his entire life of 175 years. The problem is that these are arguments from silence. Mr. Robey wasn't there. How does he know that there was no command? How does Mr. Robey know that Abraham never tithed any other time? He doesn't know. To be fair, maybe he did or maybe he did not, but the Bible does not explicitly say. All it says right here in black and white is that Abraham gave tithe of all. That's it. The scripture also says that Abraham obeyed God's voice and kept his charge, commandments, statutes, and laws. How does Mr. Robey know that tithe was not included in any of these statutes or laws? He doesn't know. The problem of arguing from silence is that when you step away from the text and begin to speculate, then you are in no position to tell other people that they can't speculate. If Robey wants to do this, then so can other people, but that's not what he does. After making arguments from silence, he says, "Where God is silent, does man have the authority to interject his traditions and doctrines? Absolutely not!" Exclamation point. "Add thou not unto his words, lest thou be found a liar." So he accuses and condemns other people as deceivers, liars, and hypocrites for speculating when that is exactly what he does. And to make it worse, out of his own mouth, on page 4, you can see right here from Tithe of the Land, he admits the opposite. It can be argued that Abraham was giving God his tithe, but realizing that this contradicts his claims, he gets creative and says God later amended his tithe when he gave the law to Moses for the Israelites. This, however, only makes the problem worse, because elsewhere in the New Testament, the author of Hebrews not only confirms the story of Abraham's tithe, but interestingly makes no distinction between Abraham's tenth and the Levitical tenth. Mr. Robey tries very hard to make it seem as though Abraham's tenth was completely different from the Levitical tenth, but the author of Hebrews makes no such distinction. Both are 10% and both are given to the priest, and not only is there no distinction, but he goes even further and states right here that Levi paid tithe through Abraham. Now again, we have a huge problem, because if, as Mr. Robey claims, that tithe is only from the Mosaic law given at Sinai, then why would the Levites pay tithe through Abraham if Abraham lived hundreds of years before the Mosaic law was ever given? This is very important, because Robey is attempting to create a distinction between Abraham and Levi, but the author of Hebrews does the exact exact opposite. If, as Robey claims, that tithe is only from the Mosaic law given at Sinai, then the author of Hebrews has made a significant error by claiming that Levi paid tithes outside of that law. Not only is this one of the most common evidences given in favor of tithing, but this also presents serious problems for Mr. Robey, and in all 4 of his books, he doesn't make any attempt at all to address this or argue why it's not true. Furthermore, there is another problem. Hebrews chapter 7 is focused on arguing that Jesus Christ is now a priest after the order of Melchizedek. If Melchizedek as priest received tithes and Christ is a priest after the order of Melchizedek, then why? Why should Christ not receive tithes? If the 10% tithe under the Mosaic law was declared as holy to the Lord, and Levi paid this holy tithe through Abraham, then the tithe is just as holy when given to Melchizedek as it was when given to the Levites. If Melchizedek as priest of the Most High God received the holy tithe, if the Levites received the holy tithe, and if Christ is now a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek, then he ought also to receive tithe. Because it is holy, the tithe is the personal property of Christ. So question, how can we be followers of Christ and not return his own personal property? This is another one of the most common fundamental evidences given in favor of tithing, and again, in all 4 of his books, Mr. Robey, surprise, completely ignores this. So to those of you watching this video, maybe you agree with tithing or maybe you do not, but if you are going to publish 4 books on tithing and publicly accuse other people of being lying, deceiving, unscrupulous hypocrites, then it's fair and reasonable to ask that you actually provide evidence other than your own imaginations. So anyways, there is definitely plenty more, but that's enough for today. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.